Of course your government won't teach you that. It'll probably make you pretty angry.
Of course you'd be angry if you understood this stuff. But don't worry, this fantastic lady, amazing short clip, explains some fundamental, crucial things for you and your children. But on the far end, I'll explain in a little more detail. So enjoy this, and I'll see you on the other side.
Dictators don't teach kids about money. Actually, even the world's liberal democracies don't teach kids about money. Actually, nobody teaches kids about money. I'm from Germany, and the first time I learned what inflation is was 3 years after my graduation, and I wasn't even living in Germany anymore. The governments of the world's most developed nations don't seem to care much to teach their people about money. Why is that? Maybe it's because teaching their people about money would require teaching them how their government systematically steals from them. And that the reason why they can't afford a house, can't afford to feed a family on a single income anymore isn't because they're lazy millennials or lazy Gen Z or whatever, but it's because they have to work their entire lives for something that the state can print out of thin air. Of course your government won't teach you that. It'll probably make you pretty angry. We live in a world that wants us in debt, that wants us consuming, wants us spending money constantly, doesn't want us saving money because saving's no good in this messy economy that we've put ourselves into. We live in a world where bad debt has become not just normal, it has become normalized, and financial institutions make money off of your misery. We live in a world where in one of the richest, most powerful nations, people pay for burritos in installments. I want to live in such a world. So they could say that I'm shilling the dictator and so on and so forth. But this was last week. These kids are part of the pilot program of the What is Money project. Because in El Salvador, 7-year-olds learn about money. Give me one other country that does this. One other country that actively pursues the financial sovereignty of its citizens. One other country that says, I know money's a tool for mass control. Well, I'm going to do the opposite and set my people free. Because I could tell you about countries that are well on their way to eradicating cash, or replacing it with digital surveillance money. Or countries that are well on their way to imposing digital ID on a wholly unwilling population without a democratic mandate. Or I can tell you about countries that have frozen their citizens' bank accounts because they engaged in protests against the regime. I can tell you none of those countries are El Salvador. All of those countries are so-called first world countries, supposedly part of the free world, supposedly full democracies according to the Democracy Index. But tell me again how El Salvador is the dictatorship.
Wow, so well said. Fantastic job. And now let's get into a little of the detail so you more deeply understand this crucial topic. So before we get into the money stuff, let's have a quick look at Gold and Geopolitics Substack. You really should sign up for everything around what's happening in the world today of finance, everything, and the whole Ponzi scheme we're under. But Gold and Geopolitics happen to have an El Salvador graph in today's post. And as you can see, in El Salvador, they're making massive changes, the regime there. And they've got crime collapsed massively. Now, it did start off high, but look at that graph. And unfortunately, they require incarceration, because the whole thing about rehabilitating, the reality is, on behalf of all the good citizens, you unfortunately have to incarcerate so that they can live their lives. So El Salvador doing amazing things on many, many fronts. Now, into the money. So on the left here, we're in a Ponzi scheme in the West for many decades, if not a century, since the Federal Reserve was set up to create massive debt and to charge us money on that debt and to cause all the crashes and booms and everything else. But this is a very interesting thing on Gold and Geopolitics. So Japan and China's share of US Treasury market or debt market is collapsing. Now, China's going straight into physical gold, and Japan, I'm not as sure, but they're collapsing their ownership of debt. And especially after the US weaponized the dollar back with the Ukraine thing, the proxy war of NATO against Russia, this has really accelerated because trust has gone. And this is the way we're going. We're going to precious metals and real assets, and the Ponzi is beginning to collapse for the Great Reset. You'll notice the UK is increasing its holdings because who leads all of what's happening in the world? the globalist bankers, right? City of London, Wall Street, epitomizing that. That's what we've got. That's what we need to beat. And of course, the UK, through the City of London, is buying bonds to help out their buddy in crime. But the key message is the rest of the world is getting out of treasuries and into real assets like metals. And the next few years, things are going to change. Now, here on the right, everyone knows about Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is being taken on as a useful asset by the US administration and the banksters. So all the banksters are now into Bitcoin and they're pumping it up, generally speaking. But Tether, which is the play to make Bitcoin, etc., a reserve asset of the United States, not a real asset like land or gold or silver or platinum. No, a Bitcoin. Well, Tether is quietly investing in physical gold, massively. So the central banks are buying gold like there's no tomorrow, and in the last couple of weeks, we found out they're beginning to buy physical silver like there's no tomorrow. So they're the smartest guys in the room. That'll give you a big answer as to where you need to go. But in any case, Tether is beating them all. So the so-called Bitcoin reserve is amassing physical assets. So that'll tell you something too. Now, the bonds collapsed in 2022 because, of course, the yields went up and the existing value of bonds massively collapsed. But the banks, of course, are allowed to not realize and reflect these massive bond losses, American debt losses, on their books. So they're just pretending they're not there, okay? But there are hundreds of billions of losses. And this is all part of the coming stock market crash that's inevitably going to happen. So be careful where your pension is and your holdings. You are at serious risk at this point. The next year or two, we're going to have fireworks. And of course, the money is tending to flow into real assets. So that's the point. Now, on real assets front, of course, Morgan Stanley now have been forced to change the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio that's been pretty much the standard for a century, or at least half a century. And they have now quietly announced their CIO, 60-20-20 might make more sense. So they hate saying this because they make no money on gold, and gold going up makes their nonsense products look bad. But they have to say it because they can't be caught out because they know what's happening. Gold's going to shoot up, and they can't be seen to have not, at least quietly, mentioned this. So now they're saying 60 stocks, I wouldn't do that. 20 bonds, wouldn't do that. But at least they're saying 20% in physical gold and related assets. And the bond king, Jeffrey Gundlach, has come out, first ever. And he said, actually, a 25% gold position isn't excessive, right? And he's the bond king. So the guys at the top, the central banks, the BIS, the smart BRICS countries, the bond king, and even Morgan Stanley are all telling us the inevitable. Gold, silver, physical assets are where you should have a big chunk of your reserves, especially if you've got net worth or high net worth. You got to protect yourself, guys. No financial advice, but it's just the way it is. And here's a fascinating one from Friday, just gone, right? So on Friday, we had, for first time really, silver shot up. As I described to you, it's going to go to triple figures and beyond. But when it shot up, the Western paper futures system that has held silver down for many decades, so silver physical is now $50-something, but even inflation adjusted alone, it should be at a couple of hundred. But it's held down by complex instruments, futures dealing in paper silver. But on Friday, physical silver forced its way up because there's a shortage now and it's getting impossible to control. So you can guess where that's going. But the exchange that uses paper silver to keep the price of real silver down panicked on Friday morning, Thanksgiving, and they pulled the plug on the whole system 3 times over the course of the day. For 10 hours, they pulled the plug on the whole Globex system because they were panicking and they had to cover their paper fraud. So they actually put it down to a cooling issue in the data center. But the IT guys came out straight away. And of course, there's triple redundancy in those centers. It's pretty much impossible to happen. But it happened at the moment silver began to break free. Physical silver value in the East began to break free. and they shut down the whole system. But this is broken. They can't do it anymore. And silver, it may come down a bit and up a bit with more chicanery, but silver and gold in the next year or two, the sky is awaiting. So you get the point anyway. So I'd give a bit of advice, not financial advice. I need to keep saying that. I'd suggest that you talk to the people at Pure Gold in London, best in the business. They know everything I just told you and a lot more. And there's a free consultation with my link down below. No obligation whatsoever, but you get a free consult with the best in the business who know everything I said and more. And I just suggest anyone who cares about their family's finances, their pension, their future, leaving stuff to their kids, and navigating this great reset that's coming in the next few years, the financial reset, go to Pure Gold. The guys will give you a free consultation, no hard sell, and just start thinking about this. So the financial system is an absolute Ponzi. All of my best people across the world in these markets and in expertise in these matters are all aligned now at this stage on essentially what I've told you. We're heading into very interesting and very dangerous times, and there's only one true, solid, kind of guaranteed and floor safe, i.e. can't really drop much, way out of this. And it's to get educated about money, how the system works, the Ponzi I described to you. Go check it out and start thinking about making your future financially safe through these tumultuous times. Thank you.